Hi everybody, welcome back to True Rescue. On this episode, we're going to do the rotating assembly on a fresh and new small block 350 build going into a C3 Corvette. Part 2 of this is going to be the top end, intake and all of that, and then dropping it into the car and seeing how we did. So let's get to it. Let me catch you up. As you can plainly see, well, I already have my my crank bearings in. This is a 1010 crank, so it's one-piece crank. They turned it, so it had to come with special bearings, different size bearings other than OEM. So keep that in mind. Why did they cut a 1010 crank for me? I don't know. Didn't ask for it, but I have it. So put that in the build sheet. It's got a 1010 crank. Can't go back to OEM bearings. What that essentially means, a 1010 crank, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, so correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. I'm human. I think it can handle up to, what is it, 111 or 110 pounds per square inch on the crank? 110,000 per square inch on the crank. Just means it can take a beating far more than what this engine here can do. But I already have my my bearings in. Clean everything up. Make sure everything is super clean, even though it came back from the machine shop. You're like, I'm ready. No. Clean everything up. Clean all the oil journals. Take you a little, I'm sorry for the wind, it's Florida, it's hot. Okay? If it's humid, it's hot. If it's hot, it's humid. If it's not hot, it's super humid, which makes it hot. It's Florida. It's hotter than the devil's jockstrap is what I'm saying. Anyway, go out and get you some of these. They're a little, I use the brass ones because they're a little softer. Cut the end off of it, hook it onto your drill, run through all of the oil passages. Make sure that they are really clean in your crank, in your journals. Make sure everything is nice and clean because you don't want to run into the situation of a piece of debris getting up into one of those oil journals there and season some things up. You'll be right back to this step and it won't be a good day. Anywho's anyway, everything's already cleaned up. I got it cleaned. It's ready to rock and roll. Now we're going to do the cam first because it's easiest to do with none of the rotating assembly installed. So let me change an angle so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. All right. So what I'm doing here is I am putting assembly lube on one half of this cam. And I'm putting a little extra on the very first one because as this goes through, it's going to wipe off that lube. I'm also going to dab a little bit all through here, you know, because the rotating assembly is out and I can get to it. And that way, it's going to go through the first journal, wipe a little bit off, but that oil is going to get on here, and then it's going to wipe a little bit off, and then it's going to get it, so on and so forth. And I'm going to go through and put a dab will do on each cam journal. Get down in there. Oh yeah! And don't be scared of this stuff. This is just for the initial start, and it will go away, and it will not clog up your pump. You'd rather it be nice and moist on the startup phase than being super dry. And I'm putting a little extra on the furthest one back because it is going to have the least amount by the time we run this cam all the way through. And I did half of it, and that way, and once it's in here, I could do the other half. Now, keep in mind, your engine, if you got a pitiful stand like I got right now, because I got the good stands got 2 other engines on it. So I'm having to use my backup stand for this engine. It's going to be at a slope, so you want to hold on to it I put a bolt in the end of it just for extra leverage as I'm going through. Be nice and gentle. Do not rush this portion of it, because you got your distributor gear that's going to also go through these bearings. Just be super gentle. And as I pass through and I start to rest, I get to the third journal. I'm going to kind of pause, hold her steady, lube it up. And then I'm going to come through here and put a little bit extra on the little bit that's hanging through on our very first one that went in. Now, I'm going to get a hold of this, and I can actually come in here and help guide this through. Nice and gentle. Kind of move that around down in there. Nice and easy. Do not harm nothing. This is the slowest part of your process right here. You don't want anything to get harmed. And I know I'm saying that a lot. It's just, it's crucial, okay? And then we're going to go to our final journal. Easy now, slow down. And this is the hard part. So we got this, we can kind of pick up a little bit. We're lined up, get in there, and we're home. I give it a little twist just to make sure that we're in nice and clean. There we go. Cam is installed. Now clean off, get you a rag. Probably wondering why I have a rag hanging off the end of the motor. Well, that's strictly for this. Now, I'm going to do my crank. That's in there, that's nice and solid. That ain't going to go anywhere for now. I'm going to keep this in here so I can keep pressing in on it. Now, same thing. Get your assembly lube. This is just so you don't have a dry start, okay? Put a little bit on your bearings. Moving right along. And whenever you get your crank down in here, you don't want to go spinning it to daylights and back. Why? Because you want this assembly lube to stay there. That's keeping it from being dry. So you set it in, and once you set it in, and I'll show you, you should be able to just have a little bit of resistance, not a lot. Not a lot, okay? Just, you should be able to free spin it and kind of feel the bearing in there. Like this. Wind noise again. Clean my hands off again. Heavy girl. Line up your main. Gentle now. Be easy. Again, you do not want to screw this up. Set it in there and just kind of give it a rock. And it should move freely. Yep. As we are. Foremost, you want to kind of clean off the top of your crank. Get it to where you can at least get a few of them in a row. The less times you rotate this, the better off you're going to be, because you want to keep as much of that assembly lube on these bearings as physically possible. So now, another thing that you want to keep in mind, whenever you're disassembling your engine, you want to keep all your caps together, right? So number one is going to go back on the number one spot. Number two, number three, number four, number five. Keep them in order. Even if you're cleaning them, keep them in order. I stamp them with the number. Some of your GM caps will already be numbered, but they always have an arrow on them. And that arrow, let me show you. And that arrow right here, focus in, right here, always points to the front of the engine, so towards the timing chain. They'll go in just like that. We're using OEM style bolts. I didn't go any kind of ARP or nothing like that because this isn't a performance build. It's just you need to refresh your motor, yoink it out of the car, take it apart, get your assembly kit, put it together. Okay, get it back on the road so you can get to work on Monday, right? Now, most important thing here, doing clearances, is your plasti gauge. Use green. Unless you're going for performance and you have greater clearances, then you would use the blue. If you have tighter clearances, you'd use the red. So all it is just this little wax strip. All it is. You only need about 1/4 of an inch. You just break it off or take some scissors and cut it off. That's the safest way to do it, using scissors. And then what you do is you put it on your cap or your surface, your bearing surface. Put your main cap down on top of it. And now you tighten down to spec. What I'm doing here, I got you at a different angle. I got my torque wrench set at 25 foot-pounds because these are 7/16 studs, or bolts rather. And it's 70 foot-pounds. So we're going to go in increments of 25. And then the last one being 20. There's 25. There's 25. Right there. I don't know if you could see that or not. That's 50 foot-pounds. Same thing. Run it in. There's 50. Run it in. 50. Now, I'm going to go up to 70. Kind of hard for me to even see. Now we're at 70 foot-pounds. There it is. There it is. Now we can check our clearance. So now we back this all the way back off. What we are looking for is 0.003 of oil clearance because this is a 1010 crank. And we are dead on the money. Let's see if I can get you in here to see this because I know you can't. So you see our little mark there and see on our plasti gauge there, it's 0.003. It's narrower than the 002, and it's definitely narrower than the 1.5. So 0.003 of oil clearance. That is a-okay because this crank is a 1010 crank. And per the machine shop, that should be what it is. So there we go. And now we're going to move on, and I'm going to go through all of these doing the same exact thing. I don't want to bore you with that, so I'll bring you back whenever I'm done with mention. I have the timing set on here because I had to step away and the engine stand here is kind of sloped down. So I went ahead and put it in time, lined everything up, and put this assembly on. That way my camshaft wouldn't fall out. I could use a piece of tape, but I didn't want to trust it. I didn't know whenever I was going to be back here, so I went ahead and did the timing. Dot to dot. Just remember that. If your dots are aligned together, and I could show you if you hadn't ever done this before. There we go. Most of you that watch the channel have, but there might be some new folks coming in wanting to learn how to build. So, there's a timing mark, and there's a timing mark. You want to line those up, and then you know you're at TDC. I'm going to flip this sucker over and start with some pistons. I'm going to turn my fan down. It's hot. It's Florida. Anyway, on Chevy, small block Chevy engines in general, Just about every piston you're going to get is either going to have a dot or an arrow. This one has an arrow. I don't know if you can see that or not. Arrow always faces the front of the engine, so towards the timing chain. And you'll notice this motor is kind of at 1 o'clock. I don't have it square. This is just so it's easier for me to get to on this side. I'm going to do one bank at a time, 1, 3, 5, and 7, 2, 4, 6, 8. Now, there's always a debate. Oh, there's a whole scientific method to clocking your rings. Nope. Take your compression ring, hold the rod out in front of you. 10 o'clock. Next ring, 1 o'clock. 10 o'clock. And then your oil ring, top oil ring, same thing. Rotate it around and do the same thing again. And that's it. That's all it requires. Now, get you some vacuum caps, or I typically use like vacuum hose or fuel line hose. But right now, all of that stuff is over there, and I have vacuum caps right here, readily available to me. And just put them on your studs. That's going to protect the crank from getting marred up. Then you just, these are super handy. Summit, I think it's like 25 bucks a ring compressor. You just drop your piston in, lube up your piston, lube up your cylinder. And then you just finagle it in there. This is going to be a little bit tighter. Squeeze it just enough to get her in. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of assembly lube, put on my bearing. We want to eliminate as much of a dry start as humanly possible. This stuff ain't going to clog anything up. Make sure that your arrow is forward. Gently drop it down. And I have my crankshaft, well, getting ready to have my crankshaft, to where I can just drop this straight in with no problem. Kind of up. And now I'm going to just grab my rubber mallet here. Just going to use the end of it. You don't need that special elongated, goofy looking dead blow. You just start inching it down, nice and gentle. Guide it onto your crank. And you hear that dink. That means it's there. Piston number 1, figuratively and literally, is now in. Set your ring squeezer, your hammer down somewhere clean. Do the same thing here. Assembly lube on the bearing cap. Get your nuts. Pull off your caps and just snug them up. We'll torque them down in a few minutes. Now, to save time and your attention span, I'm going to go ahead and drop all of these in, bring you back whenever I'm done. Phenomena. One thing I forgot to mention. You have a flat side of the bearing and then a recessed side. The recessed side goes towards the crank. Flat side goes towards the other piston. All of my rods torqued down 50 foot-pounds. I called the machine shop again. Sorry about the wind. Because I also have 3,000 clearance on my rod journals, rod bearings. So I'm waiting on a call back from them because I just want to verify, because it almost seems like I have left and right movement. Fore and aft is okay on your piston rods, okay? Fore and aft, forward and backwards. Side to side though, that's usually a sign of worn bearings. Not saying that these are worn. I'm almost thinking that these might be a thou or two too thin. So waiting on a call back from them. So I'm kind of at a standstill here. But I just threw one of my old harmonic balancers over so I can rotate the assembly. That way I can torque all of these down. There's no specific torque sequence on your rods. I just do left bank, then right bank, and then do them all at the same time, torquing them down from front to back. I do recommend, though, however, if you can't sit here and focus on doing all of your torque sequences all at one time, get you a paint marker and dot the ones that you have done so you know exactly where you're at if you have to leave and come back to it. I mean, life happens. You never know what's going to happen. So I just know that I was going to be able to do it, so I did not paint marker any of it. But I do recommend doing that if and when you are, and you may or may have some kids that might come in and distract you or something like that. You know, I mean, we're all human. We're regular average Joes here. We're not a machine shop. Anyway, so once I hear back from the machinist shop that this crank and these rods and these bearings and these pistons come back, I will continue recording. Well, I got the phone call from the machine shop using these ACL bearings for the mains and the rods. They say 30 thousandths is where it needs to be. They're the machine shop. And it's documented, so if it's wrong, anyway, here we go. So the next step, I'm going to go ahead and drop my lifters in here. And I've been soaking these suckers in some fresh Earl. Nice and full. Now these should move quite freely down inside this block. That one. Anyway, back at it. Drop these in and start working on some gaskets and some heads. But that is going to be on the next episode. As far as the bottom end rotating assembly goes, we are money. And like I said at the beginning of this video, I do not consider myself an engine builder. I'm just the average Joe. I got to investigate that one. Just the average Joe working on cars in his garage. Just like you watching. And do I make mistakes? Yep. Try not to, but I'm human. But anyway, the next episode of this sucker, we're going to slap some heads on it and an intake. Slap it down in a car. How about it? At least that's what the end goal will be. Will it happen? I don't know. I'm not a fortune teller. But hang around and find out. And we'll see you next time right here on Tree Row Rescue. You have yourself a wonderful day or evening. See ya. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all the things. I like talking with you guys. It's kind of fun. But anyway, have a good evening. We'll see you. There you go. Just had a little bit of debris on there. Let's get some food.